It began with a quiet field in the countryside, a place where wildflowers danced in the wind and the trees whispered secrets only they could understand. It was peaceful, almost too peaceful. But in the middle of that serenity stood a sight so haunting, so heartbreakingly loyal, that locals would slow down just to take it in. A tall, chestnut-colored horse, weathered yet proud, standing unmoving at the edge of a small grave. Every morning, every evening, rain or shine, he didn't wander, he didn't graze. He simply stood there, eyes fixed on the carved stone, as if waiting for something, or someone, that would never come back. Nobody knew his name at first. He didn't belong to the nearby farms, and no one had seen him being brought in. He had just appeared one morning, and then came again the next. Then again, and again. By the third week, he had become something of a legend. It wasn't long before an elderly woman named Martha took interest. She ran the local feed store and had heard the whispers from customers. There's a ghost horse up on Ridge Hill. No, not a ghost. A grieving soul. Martha drove up one evening just as the sun dipped low. Sure enough, there he was. Not moving. Not flinching. She watched him from a distance, unsure if she should approach. Then she saw it, the stone marker. Weather-worn, but legible enough to read the name etched into it. Lena Mayfield. Beloved daughter. 1994 to 2021. Martha's breath caught in her throat. Lena. That name tugged at something deep inside. She remembered the young girl. Kind eyes, always helping out at the shelter, and often seen riding a horse. A beautiful horse. The next morning, Martha returned with a bucket of oats and a gentle tone. Hey there, boy. You hungry? The horse didn't move at first, but his ears twitched. Slowly, he turned his head, eyes deep and glassy, carrying a pain only the heart could recognize. He stepped forward, not to eat, but to stand near her, like he needed her to know. Martha gently laid the bucket down and stood beside him. You miss her, don't you? The horse let out a soft exhale and lowered his head. Word spread like wildfire. A local news crew came by. They captured footage that would later go viral. This lone horse keeping vigil over a young woman's grave. No chains, no fences, just choice. Just love. A reporter interviewed Martha, and her words echoed through millions of screens. Some animals don't need leashes to show loyalty. Sometimes, love ties them stronger than any rope ever could. The town decided to investigate. Who was this horse? Why had no one claimed him? Sheriff Dalton, a man who'd known Lena since she was a baby, dug into old shelter records. And there it was, her adoption papers from 6 years ago. The horse's name was Midnight. Lena had rescued him from an abusive farm when he was just a colt. They were inseparable. Through every birthday, every heartbreak, and every summer storm, they had each other. Until the accident. Lena had died in a car crash on a stormy night. She was on her way home from volunteering at the animal shelter. Midnight had been at a boarding stable during the week, but when he was brought back, he ran. He broke through fences, escaped fields, and somehow found her grave. No one taught him. No one led him. He just knew. The next morning, Martha brought blankets. The nights were getting colder. She laid one near the grave and watched as Midnight nudged it gently, then curled beside it. Not on it, never on it, just close enough to be near her. She sat with him for hours, speaking softly, reading out loud from an old book Lena used to love. Maybe he thinks she's just asleep, she whispered, and he's waiting for her to wake up. The horse raised his head at her voice, and in his eyes, she saw something deeper than animal instinct. She saw memory, loss, hope. But just as the town began to rally around him, just as people started visiting to leave flowers and letters beside the grave, a stranger arrived. A man in a dark pickup truck, with a leather hat and a sour expression. He watched Midnight for a long while from the road. Then, without a word, he turned the truck around and drove away. No one knew who he was. But Martha had a bad feeling. Because something in that man's stare didn't feel like mourning. It felt like ownership. And that's when things began to change. The next day, Martha arrived early with her thermos of coffee, but something was off. Midnight wasn't at the grave. The blanket lay untouched, the flowers wilted in the morning dew. Her heart dropped as she looked around the field. Nothing. No hoofprints. No trail. Just silence. Panic rose in her chest. Midnight, she called, walking toward the nearby woods. Boy, where are you? She searched for hours, her boots soaked in wet grass, calling his name again and again. Locals joined in. Even Sheriff Dalton brought his dog to help track. But there was no sign of the horse. By sunset, whispers had started. He's finally moved on. Maybe he found peace. But Martha didn't believe that. Midnight wouldn't leave. Not like that. And then it happened. 2 days later, a teenager hiking through the Eastern Ridge Trail spotted something. A truck, parked behind the trees, half buried in brush. He got closer and saw a metal gate chained, and behind it, Midnight. His mane was tangled, his eyes dull. The moment he saw the boy, he neighed, a sharp, broken sound. The teen called 911. Sheriff Dalton arrived within the hour. He recognized the truck immediately. The plates matched a man named Clyde Harrow, an old horse dealer with a reputation darker than night. He'd been banned from selling animals after being caught mistreating dozens of horses years ago. Apparently, he'd seen Midnight on the news. Clyde claimed the horse was his property, that he had paperwork, that he'd been looking for Midnight for years. But Martha knew better. He was Lena's, she said firmly when questioned. And anyone who saw them together could tell you. That horse would have followed her into fire. He doesn't belong to Clyde. He never did. A legal battle began. Clyde provided an old, nearly illegible bill of sale. It was dated before Lena rescued Midnight. But there were signatures, even if questionable. Meanwhile, Martha refused to let it go. She spoke to Lena's parents, dug through her old notebooks, and found photos, journals, even an essay Lena had written in high school titled, "My Best Friend Has Hooves." It told the whole story. How she found him malnourished, trembling, how she worked for months just to earn his trust, and how they became each other's reason to breathe. Sheriff Dalton sent all the evidence to a local judge. And while the case dragged through the system, Midnight was held in a private stable. But something was wrong. He refused to eat, refused to neigh, refused to stand. He lay in the corner of the stall, eyes open, but lifeless. It was as if being torn from that grave had broken something inside him. Martha visited every day. She brushed his coat, read to him like before, and even played audio recordings of Lena's voice. But he wouldn't respond. Until one rainy morning, something changed. Martha sat beside him again, wrapped in her coat. Her voice cracked. "You can't give up on her, Midnight. She wouldn't give up on you." Silence. She reached into her bag and pulled out an old scarf, a purple one, with tiny horse prints. "She used to wear this when she rode you. Remember?" She placed it near his nose. Midnight stirred, just slightly. Then, with effort, lifted his head and sniffed the fabric. And for the first time in days, he stood. It wasn't strong. It wasn't fast. But he stood. Martha whispered through tears, "That's it. That's my boy." Word spread again. Local vets volunteered to help. A nonprofit sent over supplements and therapy equipment. Volunteers came to repaint the stable and build a small arena. But through it all, Midnight kept walking to the stall gate every day, looking out toward the hills, as if waiting to return to her grave. 3 weeks later, the judge delivered the ruling. Clyde's papers were deemed invalid. The signatures forged. The horse would remain under the guardianship of Lena's family. Martha wept with relief. She wasted no time. That same afternoon, she opened the stall and whispered, "Ready to go home?" Midnight took a step, then another. And when he reached the field again, something incredible happened. He neighed loud, clear, and proud. He walked straight to the grave. The wind picked up, rustling the leaves as if the world itself was watching. And he bowed his head. Martha stayed back, letting him have his moment. But then she noticed something new beside the stone. A small, carved figure. A child's sculpture. Of a girl on a horse. It hadn't been there before. She turned to look around. No one. Then she noticed hoofprints. Small ones. Faint. Midnight stood quietly, as if he knew. As if he saw something no one else could. But the peace didn't last long. A letter arrived the next day. Certified. Stamped. A wealthy land developer had bought the surrounding field. And he wanted the gravesite cleared. Immediately. The town was about to face a battle much bigger than one horse's grief. The letter shook Martha to her core. The new landowner, a man named Preston Vale, had purchased the acres surrounding Ridge Hill with plans to build luxury cabins and a private retreat. But his plans came with a cruel stipulation. Asterisk, asterisk, all existing structures and memorials must be cleared. Asterisk, asterisk. That meant Lena's grave. That meant Midnight's sanctuary. And it meant tearing apart a story that had touched hearts far beyond their small town. The town held a meeting that evening. Emotions ran high. "We can't let them do this," one woman said, tears brimming in her eyes. "He has money. Lawyers. We're just people," someone muttered in despair. But Martha stood up slowly. "No, we're not just people. We're her people. And he's her horse. And we have a voice, even if it shakes." They started a petition, posted online, shared Lena and Midnight's story again, this time with more urgency. News crews returned. The video of Midnight standing at her grave had millions of views before, but now, the world watched again with purpose. Children painted signs. "Let Midnight stay." A retired artist sculpted a statue of Lena and Midnight from reclaimed wood and bronze, placing it at the edge of Ridge Hill. The internet roared. Celebrities retweeted. A famous singer donated to the cause. An animal rights group offered legal help pro bono. And the landowner noticed. Preston Vale called Martha directly. Cold. Dismissive. "I bought the land legally. Sentimental stories don't change contracts." But Martha had lived through too many storms to bend now. She loved that horse-like family. And he hasn't left her side even in death. If that doesn't mean something to you, then maybe money's made you blind. She hung up without waiting for a reply. The case went public. A judge issued a temporary stay order, delaying any development until further review. Martha organized a vigil. Hundreds arrived, many with candles, some with letters. And Midnight, he stood still as ever by her grave, as if understanding that everyone was fighting for their story. Then came the hearing. A courtroom packed with townsfolk, reporters, and lawyers. The judge listened as Martha read from Lena's own journal. "He found me when I didn't know how to be found. Midnight didn't save my life just once. He saves it every day just by being there." There wasn't a dry eye in the room. Preston Vale's lawyer argued land rights, profits, contracts. But it was clear. He'd underestimated how powerful love and loyalty could be. The ruling came down days later. Lena's grave would be preserved. Midnight would stay. The field would be declared a protected local landmark. Cheers erupted outside the courthouse. Martha hugged the judge. People clapped. A child ran forward and tied a flower crown around Midnight's neck. But even in that joy, the old horse remained calm, stoic. He walked back to the grave, stood once more, and bowed his head like he had every day. Weeks passed, then months. Martha visited every morning. She'd often find people already there, quiet visitors, travelers, families. They'd leave drawings, notes, photos of pets they had lost. Lena's grave had become more than a memory. It had become a place for remembering. And Midnight, he aged. Slower, gentler. On a spring morning, 2 years after the battle, Martha came with oats like always. But something felt different. The air was still. Too still. She saw him, lying peacefully beside the grave. Not curled in pain. Not alone. Just resting. His eyes were closed. And he wasn't breathing. Martha sank to her knees, the bucket dropping from her hands. She touched his mane, tears streaming freely. "You stayed until the end," she whispered. "You never left her. Not once." Midnight had passed quietly in the night, next to the only one he'd ever truly loved. The town held another vigil. Thousands came this time. They buried him beside her. A new stone was placed next to hers. Midnight, the horse who waited and never gave up. Visitors still come. Children sit by the twin graves and tell their pets about the horse who knew how to love better than most humans ever could. And as the sun sets over Ridge Hill, the wind carries a whisper through the flowers, gentle, patient, eternal. Some say you can still hear hoofbeats if you listen closely, because love like that never truly fades. It just waits. Forever.